This is problem number 19 on page 86. It's called the Highland Drive problem. One of the steeper streets in the United States is the 500 block of Highland Drive. That would be this right here, Highland Drive, on Queen Anne Hill in Seattle. To measure the slope of the street, Tie-Line held a builder's level so that one end touched the pavement and the pavement was 14.4 centimeters below the level at the other end. So the level is here, right? And over here it's 14.4 centimeters high. And the level itself was 71 centimeters long. Okay, so this distance right here. So the question is, what angle does the pavement make with the level? This is the angle right here that we're looking for. And the question is, what angle is that? And again, we have ourselves a tangent situation here, because let's call this theta. The tangent of theta is going to equal the opposite over the adjacent, which means that theta is going to equal the inverse tangent of 14.4 over 71. At this point, we turn to the calculator. The inverse tangent is the second key over here and the inverse tangent key over here. The tangent key has this above it in yellow. So you push the yellow button to get the yellow function. Let's zoom in here and see what we get. The inverse tangent of 14.4 divided by 71. 11.4650. We're going to round to the nearest hundredth, so we wind up with approximately 11.47. So that's our answer to that. What's next here? A map of Seattle shows that the horizontal length of this block is 365 feet. So from here to here now, instead of being just the part where the level was, right? Because think about this, 71 centimeters is not all that long, and 14.4 centimeters is not all that high. But, right, so that was just a little tiny piece of the pavement. But if we consider the entire block from here to here, and we say that the horizontal distance is 365 feet, right? So that's this here. The question is, how much longer than 365 feet is the slant distance up this hill? So first thing we need to do is find the slant distance, this here. Right? We said this was approximately 11.47 centimeters. I'm sorry, degrees, 11.47 degrees. And what we're dealing with here is the adjacent and the hypotenuse. So this is going to be a cosine problem, where we have the cosine of 11.47 degrees is equal to 365 feet over x. Now, if we swap these, because you're allowed to do that with the rules of proportions, divided by the cosine of 11.47 degrees, and we turn to the calculator again. X is equal to 365 divided by the cosine of 11.47 degrees. What do we get? 372.437. I'm going to round it to the nearest hundredth, and I get 372.4 0.44 feet. Okay, so let's back up here. Now, let's just look at this for a second, because before we go any further, I just want to point something out. This number right here came from this, and we rounded here. We estimated this. And then we estimated again when we took 365 divided by the cosine of 11.47. We don't exactly have to do it that way. There is another way that will get you a slightly more accurate answer. So let's take a look and see what that is. Okay. The first thing we did was we found the inverse tangent of 14.4 divided by 71. And that was the number we got there. And then we came over here, right? And we used that number to get the cosine of this, right? And divided 365 by that. So let's see what we can do here. Let's get the cosine of that number. The way we do that is we're going to press the cosine key here and the answer key down here. This gives you the answer from the previous problem. And that's what it looks like in the calculator. Cosine of answer. And that will give you that, 0.980046,180. That's the cosine of the angle that we're working with. And now we're going to take 365 degrees and divide it by that, because that was our problem here. The way we're going to do that is we're going to say 365 degrees divided by the answer to the previous problem, which is this right here. And that gives us this. Okay, 372.431429. How far is that off? Not very much different in this particular case. There are some times when it's a much more serious difference. This time it doesn't make any, it really doesn't matter. But in some ways, it's easier to write out the entire equation and then push it all into the calculator at once. Now, the question itself didn't ask how long this was. It asked how much longer than 365 feet is the slant distance up this hill. So 372.44 minus 365 is equal to 7.44 feet. So the answer to this is 7.44 feet. That's the difference in length. And then the last question is, how high does the street rise up in this block? The question is in feet. What's this going to be? Let's call this y. Okay. And here's how we're going to get that answer. The opposite over the adjacent is the tangent. So the tangent of 11.47 degrees is equal to the opposite over the adjacent. Okay. So we're going to cross multiply here, and that's going to give us y. The tangent of 11.47 degrees times 365 feet is equal to 74.06 feet. One other way to go about doing this part of the problem, keep in mind, right, we're talking about the tangent here, and we got this already once, right, from our actual measurements. We know that the tangent was the opposite over the adjacent, so the tangent here was 14.4 over 71, and we want to know what is the equivalent ratio if the denominator is 365. So if I take this and multiply it by this and divide it by that, we should get the same number, or at least something very close. The difference here will be a question of rounding more than anything else, but let's see what happens. We have 14.4 times 365 divided by 71 equals 74.028, which comes out to about 74.03, which is a little bit different. It all depends here on how important it is to get an exact answer. If you're just measuring for furniture, it's not so important. If you're measuring for brain surgery, it becomes a lot more important.